Hello and welcome to Smoke and Burn. I'm Casey Gresseth, and today I'm joined by Director of Sales for SmartVMA in the Eastern U.S. and Canada, Rob Leary. How you doing, Rob?
Good morning, Casey. I'm doing terrific. How are you?
Not too bad. We were just talking a second ago. I think Kansas has had a little lighter go of the Corona deal than you guys have up there. Is it a little tense up in your region?
Yeah, it's still tense in terms of, everyone is still under, shelter and in place, order, if you will. But we've done a really good job, back in, it's been almost a month now where our governor closed down all of the bars and restaurants. And when he did it, he said Sunday night at 6:00, and it's Sunday morning. And sure enough, Sunday night at 6:00 or 9:00 rather, all the bars and restaurants were closed, and they haven't been open since. And everyone's done a great job here in Ohio, and really, just being smart about, when they need to be out and about, and really only for necessities.
Right. Yeah, it's a weird environment right now for sure.
It really is.
Now,
But I think it's bringing the country together, politics aside and everything else. I think it's done a great job to bring the country together, and just shows our strength and our ability to handle anything.
yeah, absolutely. So, Rob, you've had a long career in the sort of the technology side of the dealership industry. Can you kind of walk us through your career path?
Yeah, sure. So, I was just thinking about that. It's been over 30 years when I started with Reynolds back in was it 89, 90? After that many years, you tend to forget. And yeah, started in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, of all places, as a account manager for Reynolds and Reynolds. And then they promoted me up to Minneapolis, and I had a territory in the Twin Cities there. And then they brought me back into a marketing assignment after about 6 years in the field as an account manager. And then I ran our marketing and retention for our main product line, our main DMS, which is called Era at the time. Later, it's been called now Era Ignite. But anyway, ran that for a couple of years, and then I took over a really cool business called the Electronic Parts Catalog business. And we were a distributor for, at that time, a company called Bell & Howe, which turned into ProQuest. And then, I can't even remember, Snap-on, I think, now owns it. And then somebody else owns it now. But long story short, I ran that. And, man, that was a huge business, about a $52 million business for and that went really well. And they gave me two of our other distributors that we came in contact with, which was Mitchell and CCC Body Shop Systems. So I ran that business for us for a few years, and then I took over our Service Price Guides business, which was down in Tampa. That was kind of the engine or the power plant of all of the fixed operations for Reynolds. It was how we priced all of our labor, our parts pricing, repairs, maintenance, express services, and the like. And then had an opportunity to really take over the entire fixed operations from a product and a marketing perspective. And I ran that for, 5 years, I think 6 years. And then the president came to me and said, "Hey, we'd really like you to take on a specialist role and run your own sales organization." And so I had dotted line responsibilities for product and marketing still, but had my own sales channel. And they were all fixed operations specialists. And I had probably about 15, 16 people, both internal and external. And we specialized in really helping our dealers, better achieve their goals around the fixed operations to drive what I call the 4 pillars in fixed, which is sales, profits, retention, and CSI. If you aren't driving any of those, all 4 of those, then really nothing else matters in fixed. And that's what we did. And it was a heck of a ride. And then, and then things happen in life, and companies change and organizations change, and our president left. And so it was at that time just, time for me to leave. And And then I took a brief stint with a company called OEC. A bunch of my old Reynolds teammates had left Reynolds and had gone there and invited me over. And it was a great company, just not the right fit. It was more of an OEM driven sales environment where, your sales can take, gosh, anywhere from 2 years to 3 years. And, when you're dealing with a transactional based business like I was at Reynolds, especially in our fixed operations area, my team would have sales, probably 3 or 4 or 5 a day. And I went to a, sales environment was just, way too long for me. So fortunately I ran into, Peter Burlow at a JLR conference. I think it was either San Diego or Miami Beach. Anyway, um, and ran into him, and he and I struck up a conversation, and it was odd, Casey, that just God works in mysterious ways, I think. And on my flight out to the Jaguar Land Rover conference, I got a call from your dad, Darren Gresseth. And I'm like, hey, Darren, how you doing, man? I'm like, I'm getting ready to hop a plane. I'll call you when I land. And he's like, okay, just think about this for on the plane ride. We need sales trainers, and I think you can help us. So anyway, that was kind of in my mind, and landed in Miami or San Diego or wherever I was, and literally as soon as I landed, I walk in that hotel area, and there's Peter Burlow. And so he and I struck up a conversation about what's going on with BG and AutoNation and the growth of VMA. And, literally probably a month later, pulled an interview together with Peter and Darren and Ron. And anyway, and here I am. So, and that's 30 years and 2.5 minutes.
Man. So you were with Reynolds for a long time then. Was that a little scary making a jump when you'd been with them for such a long time?
I was. It was something I just had to do. And a lot of my friends were leaving, and really when our president left, that was kind of the last straw for me. It was really, I don't want to say imploding because it didn't implode, but we had lost so many customers. We went from 10,000 down to, gosh, I think below 5,000 in a matter of 8 to 10 years or so. And it just became not something that I wanted to be involved with anymore. But it was 28 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think so. I started in 2009 with BG, and went into dealer territory in Flint, Saginaw there. And I think I was there in the middle of that shift, because I remember when I first came on board, everybody in my territory, by almost everybody, was on Reynolds and Reynolds. By the time I left, it was maybe 30% of the stores that I had up there.
Yeah.
And there was so many players in that market all of a sudden. It was Dealer Track and Arcona and, ADP at the time. And you just saw dealers going in a lot of different directions there, especially during the recession. Everybody was trying to pinch pennies.
Yeah, that kind of became the catalyst to really, I think dealers began to really think about it. Why am I spending all this money? And maybe I need to rethink my strategy around my DMS. And I think that's where the losses really started to add up for them. And it's unfortunate. It's still a good company. I still have a lot of good friends there. Still like the owner, Bob Brockman. I think he's a genius of a businessman. A lot of people don't necessarily agree with his ways, but a few $1 billion later, it's hard to argue with.
Right. Well, I think from just what I've seen in the past couple of years here in Kansas, it almost seems to me like CDK might be on the cusp of a big change like that.
Yeah, they certainly have been struggling. When they were first dissolved by the parent company, ADP, which is really their primary business is payroll. That was a big shock, and I think they struggled to find their way. But candidly, I think I think they've done some things lately. Fortella is their new development software that is they're really opening up their software, albeit they're going to make some money from it, but where they're now allowing third parties like BG to be able now to write to the actual repair order. And that's going to come at a cost. Nothing is for free in this world, as we all know. But they've made some interesting turns, and I think that from a market perspective, I think they've been able to hold their own surprisingly, and because candidly, I thought they were going to implode, and they did not. So they've held their own, and I think this new mode that they're going through in terms of I think it's called Fortellus software again, which is a third party integrator. Is going to allow them, I think, to retain their customers better. They got some interesting strategies around that that make a lot of sense in terms of, if you're a dealer and you're on our DMS platform. I think this is the way it works, by the way. If you're on our DMS platform and you want these other third parties to play, then we'll provide you with some additional incentive if you sign a longer term contract. So they have really thought through this, and I think they've got some interesting strategies going forward that I think are going to make them a formidable player in the future.
So who do you get to see so much of that DMS world in these dealerships and stuff, and it seems like every couple of months there's a new one that pops up that I've never heard of before. Like who are the contenders that you think down the road are probably going to own a big percentage of the market?
Well, certainly DealerTrack, with their, with the size of Cox Automotive now, I think they will be the formidable and future number one. They aren't there yet, but with all of the, support and different businesses that surround that business, I just don't know how they can't succeed. So I believe they'll become the number one DMS provider. They need to get their application DMS core in order. It's still got some, I think, development difficulties there, and I know they're trying to work that out. But they can bring that into par, and then be able to have all the suite of applications that Cox Automotive has, and be able to better integrate those in. I mean, I think they will be the force to be reckoned with. But then there's who was it that Arcona that was just bought up?
I believe so.
Yeah, by was that bought by DealerTrack?
I can't remember which one of them.
No.
Okay.
That was bought out by a fixed operations company, a Dealer Socket, I believe.
Okay, I've heard that name before.
Yeah, teamed up and bought them. It's horrible. I need to go back and research that. You leave that marketplace and things begin to change, and you got to stay up on it. But yeah, there's a lot of changes happening there. Certainly some DMS providers. Dominion is one. The Microsoft application. Those a couple of those companies that I thought would be players in the marketplace. Here we are 5-6 years later that they've been in the marketplace, maybe even longer, and haven't been able to make any movements. And it just goes to show, Casey, that it seems like it would be an easy market to enter, but the reality is this is a very complex industry. You think about an automotive business, and it's really 5 or 6 separate businesses all built into one, supported by a back office or a business office, if you will. So you got accounting parts, sales, and sales is really 3 different departments in itself: new car, used car, and really you could even say certified if you wanted to. And then of course service and body shop. And so it's just a very complex business. And then you got all the communications that you have to do with the manufacturers around the ordering of vehicles, the delivery of the vehicles, the warranty of vehicles, the parts ordering, and all of that. And there's a lot of franchise agreements that you have to be involved with, and then as a DMS company, you've got to be able to integrate all those functions and features into there. And then the OEMs in and of themselves will only allow certain companies to come in and actually have that type of integration to them, right? Because that's a cost of doing business for them as well. So a lot of complexities around that market, and that's why you have only really 5 or 6 players in the marketplace that we have. And a lot of people say, well, why didn't Microsoft succeed? Well, because it's complex, and
Right.
and why aren't some of the big ERP players coming in? Well, because it's complex and it's finite. It's if you look at our dealer population, we've really gone from 24,000 dealers. And then when the recession hit, we lost, I think, 4,300 at the time. And, now we're down to below 18. And, so it's a finite set of retail and of a business, right? That's it. It's 18,000 dealers, right? Versus, the retail market, consumer market, it's 350 million plus consumers. It's just a different market. So it's finite. So that's why I think, we've got a kind of a wall there that allows us and the DMS providers to kind of maintain that position in the marketplace with not a lot of new entrants.
So as far as SmartVMA goes, I mean, I'm not sure when I first interacted with SmartVMA, but I had one of the first dealers in Michigan that signed up for it was an account of mine. And, just watching it through the years, how much it's changed and stuff. I mean, for one thing, I think the team that you guys have now is as strong as it's ever been by a long shot.
Yeah, thank you. I agree. We have some great people on the team, without question. Lauren, Jeff Hahn, Scott Martin, Zach Fox, just on that side of it. And then, we've really, we're as business environments change, Peter's having a lot of these guys learn SmartVMA, Dan Smith, Dale Smith, Tyler, all those guys are starting to learn. Mikey B is even getting involved, and it's neat to see, it really is. It's, tough times, really give people an opportunity to expand on their horizons. And I think everyone's excited about it. So yeah, it's been really fun.
Yeah, just from a user standpoint, the setup process, back in 2011, 2010, that time period, it was grueling. And now it's so easy, we've been doing a lot of the remote setups here, and it's as simple as, getting Zach Fox or Scott Martin on a conference call with the dealer for 45 minutes to an hour, and man, you've got functional menus that you can be presenting to customers. It's incredible.
Yeah. It was so when I first came on board, and Lauren Peterson is probably one of the brightest guys I've met, and he and I went out and did a couple installs in Denver, Colorado. I think they were AutoNation stores, in fact. And he was taking me through the process and stuff. And I got to thinking about my days with Reynolds, especially our service price guides team. And I'm like, man, we seem like we're spending an awful lot of time on these installs doing the specification process. And I kind of told Lauren, I said, what do you think about maybe doing some of this remotely? And he's like, yeah, I guess we could probably look at that. And then I told him what we did at Reynolds for our service price guides, which is, again, that's when you're talking about the complexity. Our menus are complex. Do not get me wrong. They are complex, but, service price guides from Reynolds was all repair and all maintenance and all quick services. So the complexity of that product was even greater. And our remote spec setups were 10 plus hours.
Oh God.
Yeah, 10 plus hours. But that was the only way we did it. We never did it on site. And then our training on top of it was all done remotely as well. And, at the height of our service price guides, we had 56% of our dealers had our service price guide solution. So, and when we were at a max of 10,000 plus, we had like 5,600 dealers, and we did that all remotely. And so when I talked to Lauren about that, we put the game plan together for the remote specification process, and you're kind of living proof. It is a complex install. When you get into the menus, it seems really simple and straightforward. It decodes the VIN and you can present the menu. Well, the devil's in the details, right? So you got to know where the mapping needs to take place in the menu, and specifically for these models, and as somewhat easy as that sounds, it's still complex, and it takes some time and expertise to set that up, as you've seen, and really to expect the distributor to do that unless you've got 10, 20 or more accounts. It's not something that the distributor is going to be doing every day. So this has really become kind of a stopgap or a value add for the distributor, so that they don't have to worry about that they can hand that off to us. They can focus on what they need to focus on, which is really training the advisors, training the techs, and making sure that they're prepared, ready, and able and confident to sell, the BG products and services, and let us and our team kind of focus on the SmartVMA and bring them along.
So, talking about setup, I think that one of the most important parts of building the menu process is, how services are packaged together. And sometimes, I think in the past I've built menus that were destined to fail because of how the packages were set up and stuff like that. I know there's kind of it seems to be like there's two schools of thought. West Coast guys build like very heavy packages, high price, a lot of value added items. And then it seems like some of the East Coast guys, they keep them stripped, bare bones, basic service focused. What's been your experience with it so far, and what do you recommend for most dealers?
Well, anyway, first off, let me just kind of take the West Coast, East Coast scenario there. So as you were saying that, it just dawned on me, what a football analogy, perfect for it, right? West Coast offense versus East Coast offense, kind of that whole philosophy. And it really is like that. It's interesting that, especially, Fleming and their team out there with Juan Baez leading that. They are really West Coast offense, pretty aggressive. But they did that over time. They didn't do that right out of the chute, right? But the difference for them is that they've been doing this for a long time. They've got it programmed into them, into the dealers to drive it that way, and it works well for them. And neither one is wrong. So the East Coast might be a little less aggressive, but at the end of the day, we're always typically using that base West Coast menu as the starting point, right? And then we begin to strip it down from there. But my overall philosophy when it comes to menu sales is one of it's kind of like a multi-point inspection, Casey. You got to get a customer accustomed and comfortable with the process and understanding how maintenance works and should work to their benefit and their vehicle's benefit. And so, like a multi-point inspection, when you do it, I used to always remember when I would be out there presenting to dealers or even talking to advisors or technicians or individual service directors, and I'd say, hey, man, just like menus, it's 100% of the time a customer gets a multi-point inspection. And I can't tell you, it's just like menus. I can't tell you how how many advisors will tell me or told me then, I'm not going to do a multi-point inspection on a customer that came in for their first or second or third service. And I said, yes, you are. And the reason is you want them accustomed to that. You know, it's the old philosophy of it's green today, Mr. Leary, right? Hey, Mr. Leary, it's your second visit. It's green today. Just so you know, things are going to begin to wear down, right? On your next visit, we might find a yellow. We might even find something that's red, which means that we didn't take care of that today. Something's failed on the vehicle, but likely it'll be yellow, and that's a future service and all that, and so on. So you get the customer thinking in that vein, and likewise, the same thing unfolds for our menus. You know, I'm not going to clobber a customer on a preferred menu when they're coming in for their first or second service visit, right? If they're at 6,000 miles, 10,000 miles, even 15,000 miles, I'm going to, you know, probably, quite frankly, I'm going to be maybe MOA and maybe the fuel additives, and that's about it, right? And then once I get them into the really getting, you know, into the 20s, certainly the 30s, that's when I'm really going to begin to leverage the full suite of our product arsenals, which I call the power of 7, by the way. So you got the oil additives, the fuel additives, and you got the power 5, right? Which we now turn into the power 8, but just hold on for a second. So you guys power 5. So you got transmission, cooling, drive line, power steering that it's there. And then of course, what did I miss? Casey?
I was in drive line, brake.
Yep, and brake. So probably didn't do that in the proper order, but you get the drift. And now I think we're going to add this 8th component, and then bring me back around because I'll go off on a tangent. And then we're going to add the 8th component, which is really brought by the pandemic. And the 8th component is going to be something around sanitizing the customer's vehicle inside and out, right? That's going to be a huge component. We're already seeing it through FrigiFresh and everything that's going on with that. And I know the guys in the lab are working on something incredible. I've heard about it. I can't say any more about it. You probably know more than I do, but that's even better and more exciting around that 8th component called, I don't know if they want to call it sanitizing or, you know, germ-free or whatever you want to call it. But anyway, so my point is when I get into the 30s, that's when I begin to leverage that full arsenal. And then that's when, if you will, the West Coast model really becomes appealing to me. That's when I leverage what Juan and his team and quite frankly, the C4 has done this as well, where they begin to leverage that. And that too is, you know, one of the big missing elements here, which is I think our you know, crown jewel, if you will, and Mary, you owe me if you're listening. Crown jewel to this is our lifetime protection plan. You know, it's a little bit of a tragedy that not enough people know about it, and a lot more people are beginning to recognize it because of SmartVMA and the way we position it. But man, I leverage the heck out of the lifetime protection plan because at 30,000 miles, you know, let's face it, I was just talking to a Ford customer yesterday in Minneapolis, right? And I said, time to leverage it, man, is you're at 36,000 miles, that warranty is up. That's when I fully leverage the lifetime protection plan. And then I tell the customer, and I tell the advisors, I'm like, hey, man, warranty's about ready to expire. That means the manufacturer's out. They're not going to take care of one part or one piece of labor on your vehicle. You are now on your own. However, I have a lifetime protection plan that will cover your entire vehicle, from your engine, right, to your fuel systems, to the drive line, to the brake, to the power steering if you have it, right, and the cooling system. So I've got in transmission, I've got and I don't know if we're going to cover this, but maybe even the sanitization of your vehicle. But all of that comes into play. And, you know, the next thing you know, you're talking to a customer about $24,000, up to $24,000 of coverage on their vehicle that they otherwise wouldn't have without our lifetime protection plan. So that's my philosophy, and that's how I kind of leverage it into the dealerships. And it really, from an advisor's perspective, it really takes their guard down immediately, because every advisor wants to tell you that every customer that comes in the front door is either a lease customer or a prepaid customer, or they only have 10,000 or 15,000 miles on it, and I can't sell them all these services. And I say, I understand that. I'm not asking you to do it. Just talk to them about the fuel and the engine oil, right? But when they get into that 30 plus, that's when we turn it on, because that's where the lifetime protection plan comes in. And that's where these services really begin to make a difference for this customer and really prolongs the life of their vehicle. So that's kind of my take on it. Probably long-winded as it may have been, but.
So basically, early on in the customer's, relationship with the dealer, low mileage intervals, we're presenting menus and MPIs, you name it, because we're trying to build value in those tools, right? Because we want them to trust that inspection sheet, that menu, when we get further along in the vehicle's lifespan. We're trying to educate the customer and brace them for what's coming, so they don't have sticker shock. They're expecting to deal with the maintenance package, and then it really by the time 30, 40,000 miles rolls around, where we're actually looking at selling them a pretty good sized package. We've been bracing them for that investment for probably a couple of years at that point. It's kind of what it seems like to me.
Yeah, that's right. You're really building the value, but again, the best way to do it is that I call it the multi-point inspection. You're just making the customer aware that it's going to come to a point in time where you're going to have to make some additional investments in your vehicle, and maintaining it just like you would at the dentist when you go and get your teeth cleaned every 6 months. Same idea holds true here. Get your car in here every 6 months, and let's make sure we're taking care of it. And I think customers, appreciate it if you start them out that way. It's when you clobber them when they've never heard about your maintenance program or your lifetime protection program, and then the next thing you know, someone's trying to hammer them on a $2,200 maintenance bill. It's the first time they've seen it.
Right. It's tough to walk away from that scenario. Even if they purchase it, it's tough to walk away not feeling skeptical or taken advantage of.
Yeah.
So I know that I've always had, I've had a lot of trouble getting menus, the process of presenting menus up and rolling, in the past and stuff. I mean, there's certain stores where it's just tough to change that culture.
Yeah.
Do you see the, like the idea of like presenting those menus at early intervals? Do you see that as important in terms of getting the advisors to just fall into the routine? Like if they think up reasons not to present a menu to these certain customers, does that spread? I mean, is that the beginning of the end of your program?
Yeah. So, a couple of different points there, Casey. So first off, you got to make something a habit, right? And a habit, a lot of different philosophies, whether it's 13 times in a row, 30 times in a row, what have you. It took me, when I was training for my triathlons, when I first started out, it took me 9 months of flip turns to where I could swim in an indoor pool. And I got the habit of doing a flip turn for 1.5 miles, right? Took me 9 months to get there. Some of us take longer than others in some cases, but ultimately that's the idea is that you want to get them comfortable presenting, and again, not pushing the sale, but just making the customer aware, especially when you get in early on. Like I always say, a customer that comes in for oil change, welcome them. Hey, thanks for coming in for the oil change, and your maintenance today that's due is X, and shut up. Right? Let the customer make the decision, right? So yeah, I think it's important that you do that. But here's the other thing. I wrote an article for the Blender about for our distributors, and what did I call it? I called it making SmartVMA part of your success formula. And we've got a lot of really bright distributors out there. We got some that do it without SmartVMA, and we got some that do it with SmartVMA. But to me, the success formula for that, and really creating more of a culture, and it really does have to start with management. And in the article, I talk about the most successful implementations we've had is when you get that dealer principal, general manager, and the fixed operations manager to help you kick off the meeting, right? And when the advisors and the technicians, and oh, by the way, it's not, kickoff meeting is not just for the advisors. The best way to do it is really to get the entire team together, right? So you got to probably start off a little earlier in the morning. A lot of people don't like that, but for the success that you want to drive, which can be the difference between for a rep, right? I think the difference between a $1 million+ year, which I know we got probably 20+ people doing that now, which is fantastic, but it's really being the difference between $1 million guy and not, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and to me, if we can get the dealer principal, the general manager, and the fixed operations director there and help us kick off that meeting, and they're all behind it and supportive of it, that's step one. And then step two is just, again, making sure that the dealer and the GM are holding their people accountable, as well as that fixed operations director, and just keep it in front of their face, right? And then once that understanding that management is watching, and that the expectation is that they present every time, that's where success begins, right? It doesn't happen necessarily especially if we don't have management support of it. If we got a fixed operations manager that isn't holding their people accountable, the likelihood is maybe you'll get one service advisor to be successful with it because they're just going to be successful no matter what. But ultimately, that's where the rubber meets the road, is getting management to support it and hold people accountable.
So with any BG program, accountability is a big component of it being successful, right? I mean, really with anything in the dealership, BG aside.
Mm-hmm.
You work with a lot of different sales reps that, have great SmartVMA stores. What role do the most successful sales reps play in that culture of accountability? I mean, what are they doing to keep the key drivers nose to the grindstone on the menu
Yeah,
process?
it's a great question. Where we see the most success is reps that are literally in there every week, and they are in there as a support mechanism, as a cheerleader, as a coach, if you will. But ultimately, they're there to hold them accountable, because at the end of the day, they know that individual rep knows that if he can drive accountability in that store, and it can be as simple as like Baez has. He's got his team trained. When they walk into a store, they know the first question that's coming out, right? And it's they're looking at their smartphone app, they're looking at what's been presented, they're looking at what's been accepted, and then they're talking to them about, hey, man, and not a negative way, but they look at them and they say, hey, man, if we could get just 3 more sales from you today, here's your spiff amount. Now let's look at that for the week, the month, the year. Look at that. Look at the numbers there. And it's that kind of repetition in a friendly kind of environment, but still accountable, but with some positive messaging behind it. That's where I see the most success in our dealerships, is when we have the BG reps doing that kind of follow up. And again, man, I mean, it's the difference. I mean this, right? I think it's the difference between a rep having $1 million year and not.
Right. So, I mean, you're not, as a BG rep, like you're probably not going to be swinging a big stick in the store, but you can talk to people, you can hold them accountable by just tracking their progress, talking to them about it, and constantly reminding them what's in it for them. Right? I think that's a big part of it too, is
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
advisors don't always, we'd like to think that they all know the math behind what they get out of selling a menu package. But I've heard that some of the guys out there, especially at launch, they'll literally like print a sold menu and total up the spiff amount for the advisor just to put it in front of them and say, hey man, you just made $15 with that menu package.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. So that's another piece of the success formula, and it's called the high five walk around or walk through. And so in a I'll call it West Coast philosophy, but that one kind of came from the West Coast, and the idea behind it is and you kind of do it. It depends on you do it whenever you get the first sale is ultimately what you do it, but you want it to be on a fairly good sized menu. So you don't want it on a customer that's probably got 20,000 or even 30,000 miles. You want typically a higher mileage vehicle where you can legitimize and sell and create some value around the maybe doing 4 or 5 or more services. But man, when you do that, you take that advisor, and just like you said beautifully, and you write down, what was sold, then you spit it out for them, you circle it, and then you high five them, and you say, let's go talk to the technician, and you go and you talk to the technician, and you're like, hey man, look what this guy just sold. That's for you, right? And this is your spiff, and you circle that, right? And then you get them to thinking, and you tell these two guys that you're standing there with, and you say, now let's talk about the number of ROs that are going through this business today, right? Let's call it 15, right? That's kind of the magic number for an advisor. They ought to be doing about 15, no more than that, I believe, in a day, right? Technician, 6, depends on their skill level, maybe 8 if they're really really efficient. And then you say, okay, now what if we were able to take that $15 spiff that you just got on those services, or maybe $20 spiff, I don't know, 15, and for the advisor, let's say we got that just on, gosh, do the math here with me, Casey. If we did that on $15 times half their ROs, let's just call it 8, that's $120 a day. And did I get
Huge.
$120 a day? And then they look at me and they're like, oh. And then I say, there's 25 days in a working week. That's $3,000 a month. I know that sounds crazy, but that's the potential, right? Now, even if you get half of that, that's $15, $100 a month, right? And you do the same for the technician, and then you extrapolate that out for an annual payoff, and the dollars become kind of insane, but that becomes the new target. That becomes the new goal. And so you do that. And then that whole time that we do that, we tell them about the beauty of pairing services. And I don't know who came up with this. I love the RIM process too. And I think those two kind of combine in some way or another. But this whole pairing of services to me is kind of, it really gave me the green light. But when we do that, we say, now let's talk about what was sold here, right? Now we got we sold the cooling system, and that's great. And we did the full cooling system exchange. We did a brake job, but we didn't sell the brake service exchange, and we didn't sell stop squeal. So when you see this, Mr. Advisor and Mr. Technician, or Mr. or Mrs., think about pairing those services. Everything that you do has a pair, right? And you start talking to them about that. And then once you've done that and you've had that conversation, they all agree that's the right way to look at things. So when they're doing their multi-point inspection, the technician, right, and he sees brake, the first thing he's thinking is, how do I pair a brake exchange into there? Do I need to include stop squeal in there, right? when I'm doing any kind of oil change. I'm making sure that I've got MOA in there. If I'm at 15,000 miles, am I thinking, even though the fuel isn't in there, do I need to be thinking about that in terms of my recommendation, right? And so on. The list goes on and on. My point is, you start talking about the pairing of services, and they all start nodding their head. They all come to the realization that, yeah, that makes sense. That's an easy way to bring these things together, not only for the advisor and the technician, but for the parts guy as well, because they have responsibility on their end. The way the parts makes money is for every part that goes over that counter and into that technician's hands. That's money. That's money for those parts guys. That's how they get paid. So when we go over there, we high five the technician and the advisor, and then we bring the team over to the parts department and we say, hey guys, here's what happened. Look what was sold on this ticket, right? If they didn't use our menus to sell that, these parts would have never crossed this counter. And therefore, you would have never been paid on any of these parts. Now, what was sold, right? Sorry. So then we talk about the pairing of services and the brakes and cooling and drive. And you get the drift, right? But we get them all thinking in that same thing. And we tell it's the responsibility of each of these individuals to question each other and hold each other accountable to think about pairing the services. So when the tech brings his brake job over and it doesn't have stop squeal or it doesn't have a brake fluid exchange, it's up to that parts counter person to say, hey man, why didn't you put or maybe we should put the stop squeal on there. Maybe do the brake fluid exchange, right? So just getting everyone on that same page, I think, creates a culture of driven collective sales. It's a thing of beauty. Okay, I went way too long.
No, that's great. I think that's a powerful insight on, again, that culture of accountability. Is like, it goes a lot further than just holding the advisor's feet to the fire. It's getting everybody to understand the value of the process and what following that means to them at the end of the day. So that's a good point, and that's something I don't think I've done a good job of in the past. Is like, all of our time is spent focusing on the advisors and what they get out of it and stuff, but ultimately, like, having the technicians and the parts guys, send up a red flag when something isn't billed out correctly, or the advisor didn't go the extra mile and sell a brake service or whatever it is. I mean, that makes a ton of sense. So you've training on menus is something that I think our thought process has evolved a lot on over the years, because I remember when early on in SmartVMA and my interaction with it, we were building 3-tier menus. It's just like now, but the process of selling them that we preached was a lot different. There was a lot of guys that recommended presenting the best package and just selling off of that, rather than showing like a 3-tier menu and letting the customer choose between those packages. They wanted you to start high and work your way down one service at a time, almost like a RIM presentation.
Mm-hmm.
I don't hear as much of that anymore. I hear a lot more of guys just saying, hey, look, keep it simple, keep it easy for the advisor, put the options in front of them, and then, make the customer choose which they want. Right? What do you see as being the most realistic model? Because, of course, not everybody's an aggressive advisor. And as much as we'd like them to be, some people are just never going to be comfortable, hard selling some of these options.
Yeah, I think it's really dependent, Casey, on the skill set of the advisor, and I think you've got to be cognizant of that. So the example is, I remember as one of the first installs that I did on my own was at a Mercedes store down in Fort Lauderdale. And when I say on my own, just I didn't have my training wheels with me. I didn't have Lauren Peterson with me, or any of those guys. But I remember talking to the advisor about it, and I said, so when you present the menus, do you print all 3 out? um, and then you present all three to your customer. How do you do that? And he looked at me kind of crazy, and he's like, dude, are you kidding me? I sell preferred only, and if I need to step it down, I'll take items off the preferred. But I've been in this business for 30 years. This is a Mercedes Benz customer. They want to take care of their car, so
Right.
they deserve the best, and that's what I provide them. So I start at the preferred, and I never use the value or the minimum ever. And so it's all based on the experience and the confidence level of an advisor in my mind, and you just got to be cognizant of that. So it's not a one size sales process, if you will, or presentation style fits all. I think you just got to know the individual you're working with, and sometimes you can take a guy that isn't that confident, and you can build his knowledge, and he can move from presenting all three at once to where he now maybe presents just the preferred and the value, right? And then he never presents the minimum, which is basically the OEM, right? So all different ways to do that. So I think you just got to look at and understand the individual and the experience level that you're dealing with.
So another thing I wanted to ask you, because okay, so when I was in Michigan and this whole thing was just kind of getting started, we had a guy there that did a lot of the sales presentations and some of the setups and stuff, and his skill level with it was questionable at best, But one of the things that I learned over the years is that too much customization can be a negative thing, right? You get managers that when you tell them, hey, look, this can be whatever you want it to be, any option you want, anything you want, we'll rearrange it, we'll fix it, whatever. And so I've kind of learned, like, when that question comes up, I say, hey, look, we've got some really successful stores around the country just like yours. What we'll do is we'll start with their menu packs, and then we'll tweak a couple of things to make them fit what you guys want to do. And that's great, but sometimes you get a manager who's just a hardliner and he wants it his way. I'm dealing with a couple of these guys right now where I'm looking at the way that they're telling us to set up the packages, and I know that they're not going to work well. They're just not well set up. What do you recommend doing in those situations? Because I'm honestly, I'm at a bit of a loss with these guys.
Yeah. So what I normally do there, and you got to tread the water fairly carefully at this moment. So what I normally do there is I'll just say, okay, so we're taking our most successful customer based upon your make and franchise, and we're going to basically bring this forward into your store, and we're going to modify it based on your labor times, your pricing, your parts pricing, et cetera, and kind of customize it from that perspective. So I just want you to take a moment, and I want you to look at this guy's sales, and if it's not like RO size, right, I'll find one that is, like RO size. I don't care about market. That to me is immaterial. Although we all hear that, oh, my market's different. Well, it's not. We're all human beings, and we all drive a car, and we all need it maintained.
Right.
But anyway, so that's what I look at doing. Is I'll take that menu, and then I'll take their last quarter sales in terms of menus, and then I'll take this guy's, and I'll just do it on units, right? Because the dollars are going to be different, right? Based upon, if I got a West Coast guy or an East Coast guy, and I've got somebody in central Kansas or in the middle of the country, obviously the labor price is going to be significantly different, right? So you can't always do labor and parts, but when you can do units and show the difference and just say, so this is what this menu generates. Like size dealership, right? Same franchise. The reason they were able to drive these numbers was because the way the menu was set up. Now I understand the way you want to do it, and that's good. I like that, but let's try it this way first, and then if we need to modify it, let's look at modify. But I think it makes sense to try it this way first. What do you think? Or wouldn't you agree? That's probably a better way to say that.
So leverage the success of another
Yeah,
store,
absolutely.
compare them.
Yes.
Gotcha. I see.
Yeah.
So
Does that
kind of a
make sense?
broader. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Let someone's success speak for the result.
Yeah.
Like the rather than just you telling them what's best.
Yeah, and I think you're out there too. Is let's use this one to begin with, get you guys started, and then if we need to modify it from there, it's not driving the results that we want. Then we can look at tweaking it. But I think based upon the numbers I see, this probably makes the most sense. Wouldn't you agree? And then they'll probably come with you. But go ahead.
So kind of a broader question here, but I think we're like at NADA this year. I saw a bunch of new kind of interesting technology that's being pitched to these dealers about the write up process, customer interaction, handling communication, and then of course with all the COVID-19 stuff. I mean, even if this ends next week, the repercussions of it are going to echo for a while, right? What
Yeah.
are some of the technologies that you've seen that you're keeping your eye on? You think we're going to see a lot more of in dealerships and on the drive in the future?
Yeah, that's a great question, a great point, and really timely. So it's interesting because I'm actually speaking on that on Friday at 9:45 Eastern time on for the Fixed Ops Roundtable. So I don't know when this podcast is going to go, but I'm just going to do a little advertisement for myself. Uh,
Yeah.
but but anyway, I'm going to be speaking on that subject exactly, and that is, how this is an opportunity for all of us to reboot, right, and do the things that we know we should have been doing all along, and really that this pandemic, as crazy as that sound, I really think this is going to be a blessing in disguise. And I know that sounds crazy, but I think it's really allowing people to rethink, whether it be rethink their family, rethink their relationships. Quite frankly, it'll be interesting to see how some babies come out of this one. By the way,
Right.
right? But to rethink about their businesses, right? Their employees and their customers. And so when I say that, and just getting to your question, from a technology perspective, I'm calling this a frictionless service experience. And if you just think about it for a moment, what I mean by that is really having a service experience where you have zero physical interaction with a customer, right? And before this pandemic, that sounded insane, if not impossible. But let's face it, Amazon is living proof, right? That we can do that in almost any capacity, quite frankly.
And the people are hungry for it.
Yeah, right. And people are hungry for it. And so when I thought about that and I started kind of building the presentation, I said, that really means for the inside of the dealership as well. There's no reason for these departments inside the departments of the departments themselves where they have to physically be in contact with each other. There's no reason for it whatsoever. The technology is there, right? And so in this presentation, I say to everyone, I say, I want you to envision tomorrow where shelter in place is still the rule of the law, but you're open for business and customers can come to you digitally, not physically. And your personnel will not interact with each other physically, but digitally. And you will be amazed on how much more productive you will be. You will be amazed at how much more sales you will have, better profits you'll have, better retention you'll have, and better CSI. And so let me bring that back to a couple of key components about the technology side of it. So to your question, what do you see as the big movers and shakers? Mobility is going to be big, but the biggest one is probably going to be self-service kiosk and concierge, pickup and delivery, front end and back end. That means end service. And so I talk about all of this, Casey, and the more I got into it, the more excited I got about the opportunity to really to have this pandemic be a catalyst of positive change for our dealers and an opportunity to reboot themselves and rethink how they do business from a customer perspective to an employee perspective. And really, I'm excited about this. I think BG is at the cusp of really being able to do a lot of this stuff for our dealers, right? I mean, we've got the SmartVMA and the menus, which is awesome. We got the new next gen coming out, but we've got kiosks coming, the self-service kiosks coming, right? We just met with
Really?
the team last week. That thing's moving quickly, right? And so all of those are big factors, but I just think that that's going to be the play, and that's going to be the catalyst of change that I hope our dealers and our industry embrace, because it's there, it's available, and it can work.
Oh man, that's exciting. I'm interested to see where that goes. That sounds really cool.
Yeah. It's but I was talking to my girlfriend about the concierge service, right? And I said, hey, let me ask you a question. If a dealership offered to pick your car up, take it to the dealership, work on it, and bring it back to you, clean and sanitized inside with all the maintenance that you needed to do, and you had to pay a little extra to get it done, would you? And she looked at me and said, of course I would. You know me. And I said, what about your friends? And she said, of course they would. You know them. And this, the more I thought about it, and I said, so what with a dealer that did that, let me ask you a question. And if they offered up their next appointment to you and scheduled it right then and there when they delivered that car back to you, would you schedule the next appointment based upon that service? Absolutely, I would. And I said, so let me ask you this: where would you buy your next car based upon that experience? And she said, that dealership. And so I think that Casey is the opportunity. And so when I look at the tragedy of the retention puzzle that we've been plagued with in the dealer retail space around service and retention, where in the 30 years that I've been in this business, we haven't moved the needle 1%. It's still 70% defect post warranty, right? I think this is that moment that, and I'm excited to be part of it, man, that we're gonna change that model. We're gonna start to change it. It might be 5% in the first 3 or 5 years, right? But then it's gonna be 10%, 20%, 50. I mean, that it's gonna be the ultimate way of doing business and how dealers will protect their customers. I really think that's gonna be the key.
I think you're right, man. So in closing here, there's a lot of reps that have been with BG for a long time. There's new guys out there. Maybe they had a negative experience with one of their dealers in VMA, or maybe it's just like, man, that's all that technology stuff's not my wheelhouse. It's outside my comfort zone, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
For the guys who have not embraced VMA or, really done their due diligence on figuring it out, learning it so that they can represent it to their customers. What do you recommend for those guys? I mean, is there, a way that they can get in contact with someone with SmartVMA, or do you have some basic informational videos or anything that you guys do? How do you recommend they get started?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So thanks for asking that. So we've got literally on dashboard, on the site out there. We've got there's four services that we offer now. One is called the new launch, and by the way, each of these components are at each of our each of our signature lines. So where it says, "Hey, thanks," and then Rob Leary, Director of Sales, SmartVMA, right there next to my name, it has these four direct links. So they can do that, or they can go to dashboard. So the first point is that if you need to, if you want to launch a new customer, well, let me start here. Let me get back to your point. Sorry. So if you want a demonstration, right, of SmartVMA or any of the SmartVMA tools, whether it be menus, advisor, tech, what have you, whatever you want, you can go to that link and request demo, and that will send us a note, and then we schedule a demo with you. You just give us 2 times and 2 dates, and then we'll normally fit it into one of those 2 dates and times, and then we'll schedule that with your dealer, and we'll do an entire presentation for them over the web, and works out great. And then we track that sales progress and all that, and then when it's time for you to order for SmartVMA, then you just go, and right next to our name again is another link called launch, right? Or new, I think it's called launch. Yeah, SmartVMA launch. And you just select that button, and then that takes you directly to a link where you order SmartVMA for your customer, right? And then if you need additional training for your customer, there's another link that says training. And then if you need a relaunch, meaning that, hey, you had service management turnover, right? Or they really want to start using it and they've changed their pricing and we want to do a relaunch, then you do relaunch. And that will get us started into a relaunch. So there's all those avenues to do that. But suffice to say, to begin with, I would recommend that from a distributor standpoint, I would highly recommend get your team involved into a team meeting. Let myself or one of my team members or Lauren or any of his team members take you through an entire presentation of SmartVMA menus and explain how it works. Let us show you some of the success stories that we've had, right? And start there, and then have your reps go out and kind of preach the good gospel, right? If you will. And don't try to sell it yourself, right? Just say, hey, we've got a tool called SmartVMA menus. It's a digital menu. Some of the largest dealer groups, individual stores, mom and pops all over the country are using this and really driving some numbers. Here's some of the results for a franchise like you. We can set up a demonstration this week if you'd like, and see if that's a fit for you, if that makes sense, right? And that's all they need to do. And then we'll do the webinar for them and get things rolling. But that's as simple as it can be. But at the end of the day, for those reps that feel like they're maybe late to the party or that they just don't like technology, right? Use this pandemic as an opportunity to be the catalyst of change for yourself. I promise you won't be disappointed. Learning something new can be exciting, right? And when you learn something new and it provides even more money in your pocket and for your family, there's nothing better.
Absolutely. Yeah, and guys, again, take it from me. I've watched SmartVMA evolve over the years, and you don't have to be a technology expert. You don't have to be responsible for the back end and all the setup and building menus and stuff. You don't have to know every corner of the program nowadays. Really, what the new system for setups and things like that allows you to do is just be a salesman. Just reinforce the process and let Rob and his team of specialists handle all that, the back end technological side of it. But Rob, thanks so much for being here, man. I really appreciate you, sparing some time for me today. And again, can you give out the details on your Fixed Ops Roundtable?
Yeah, absolutely. So first and foremost, thanks, and it's been an honor to be on your podcast. I think this is a stroke of genius by you. A lot of kudos go to you for this, and I've learned a ton in listening to your podcast. So thank you for putting this together for the for the company and all of our reps out there. But yeah, so the Fixed Ops Roundtable is going to be at 9:45 a.m. Eastern Time. I believe Peter put out a message to all of the distributors, and I believe it's going to be on Dashboard as well. If not, I'll make sure it's out there. But it's going to be 9:45, and obviously it's not just me. There's a host of speakers. I'm kicking it off, but there's a host of speakers after me, and there's going to be some really cool things. Brian, God, I forget his name, Benstock from Paramus Honda is a dealer out of Queens, New York. And man, you want to talk about a mover and shaker and some of the things that he's done. If you hear his story about how a Honda dealer from Queens became the servicing Honda and Acura servicing dealer for all of Manhattan. He got the OEMs to not put any more dealership, not put another Honda or Acura dealership in Manhattan, and now he remotely, concierge service, by the way, services all Honda and Acura customers in New York City. What a story! So,
Wow.
My story is a good one, but this dude's really good. So I encourage people to go and listen to that.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Rob. Appreciate it. Good luck with your roundtable. And
Thank you,
yeah, man, keep killing.
All right. Thank you, man. See you, Casey.